Welcome to the Fund Your Retirement podcast.
Everybody thinks that no matter what you want to accomplish in your life, we tend to focus on the how, the strategy of it. So if listeners say, "Oh, there's a guy doing a podcast on retirement," they expect to tune in and hear somebody say, "Buy here, sell that," whatever, and the strategy. And that's not where you should start to solve any problem in your life. You should start with the mindset around it and then putting yourself in a powerful, creative state. And when you do that compelling future, you turn on parts of your brain that then help you access more creativity, more resiliency, more flexibility. So literally by thinking about what kind of sailboat we were going to buy, we made ourselves better filmmakers so we could make more money.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fund Your Retirement podcast. Today's guest isn't here to discuss the next stock market crash. He's not here to tell you what stock to buy or which commodity to invest in. And he's not the founder of a tech unicorn that he sold for $1 billion. Rob Dubin achieved a huge financial goal of achieving financial independence at the young age of 42 and spent the next 17 years sailing around the world with his wife, living the dream. Rob is here to talk about the 4 principles he used to achieve that goal by the age of 42, which are Principle 1, how to think about money. Principle 2, spend less and save more. Principle 3, increase your earnings. And Principle 4 is wise investing so you can too. Hello, Rob, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I love what you just said, that I achieved financial independence, because I think that's a really great concept. I just mentioned to my wife over breakfast that I was doing a podcast on retirement today, and she said, that's not really a very good word, because what it conjures up is, in your rocking chair on the front porch and life is over for you.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole concept of doing that early is really financial independence, so you can go be free and do what you want to do. Yeah. So I love that you introduced me that way. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I agree with you. I mean, part of the whole what we're trying to do here at Fund Your Retirement is also demonstrate that it's about reframing retirement, that there is so much more to do once that goal has been achieved. You achieved it at 42 and you spent the time sailing around the world. So it's about expanding people's horizons that, hey, look, it can be done. And there is other alternatives. So yeah, appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I never worked. I did lots of things that I absolutely loved and that I got paid for. And nice. That certainly is a different mindset about the working portion of your life.
Yeah.
I was a filmmaker. I loved making movies. And for the first, 10 or 12 years, I did it. I started my own company in my 20s. And for the first bunch of years, I didn't really care how much money I made. As long as I got to do creative film projects and I had enough to pay the crew and keep the lights on, I was happy. But eventually, as I got a little bit older, I wanted to accumulate more and have a different life. And I wasn't thinking at all about retirement, but I was, wanting more out of life. And so I started putting a priority on earning and saving more, and that certainly made a difference. And then a couple of things happened for us. We had kind of a personal speed bump in our lives. We were lost on a ski trip up in the Colorado Rockies, and we were out in the wilderness for 5 days and given up, the worst storm in Colorado's history, and we were given up for dead. The sheriff said the search was being called off and that they would find our frozen bodies in the spring.
Yeah.
And my wife ended up in the hospital with severe frostbite and all that. But eventually, we overcame all that. But part of what got us through that was creating a very compelling future in our minds of what we wanted to do. So we envisioned how we were going to go sailing, what kind of boat we were going to go sailing on, where we were going to go. And we made this picture in our minds very real to us. Yeah. And the reason I mention that is because this sort of personal crisis we went through, examining our lives, when we were nearly given up for dead, it's very similar to what so many people have gone through in the pandemic. People have around the world, they've suddenly said, well, is my life what I want it to be? Am I going in the direction I want to go? Is all this working for me? And that's part of course, what's fueled the Great Resignation. I don't know if you're having it as badly in the UK as we are in the US, but 52% of the workforce is thinking about leaving their jobs. So the reason I mention that is because I think what we went through because of our personal crisis is similar to what other people are going through now. And so it's a great chance to do that re-examination and then make these shifts that you just mentioned in those 4 elements. And the first one certainly is changing your mindset about money.
Yeah. So, that's great. Let's go there then. So, principle 1 is, how did you change your thoughts around money? Because, with the greatest respect, when you were on that hillside or you were trapped in that storm, did you at that point have the income to achieve your dream, or did you have to go out and generate that wealth to achieve the boat and the leaving work and things like that?
Let me answer that question in a little bit of a roundabout way. We had been filmmakers for a number of years, and we were very, very successful at it. We had, one of the biggest companies in our market. And then we spun off our film business into a different kind of business. It was a video magazine. I guess the closest thing that you can to compare it to today would be something like a paid subscription YouTube channel where people paid to get our videos every 4 times a year. And that business did not go as well as we had hoped. And we had raised a bunch of money, $250,000 to start it, and we burned through that, and then we burned through the 50 more thousand that we didn't have. And so it was going sideways, and we had to do everything we could to conserve. And because I felt I owed a huge debt to my investors, I took 0 salary for a couple of years. Actually, I took 0 salary for the first year while I worked 80-hour weeks.
Yeah, to pay it
and
back.
My wife took about half of her salary. And then the next year, I think I took $16,000, and my wife took half of her salary. So we had done this extreme austerity program for a couple of years. And then when we did start doing better with the business, we knew we could live on basically 1/4 of our total joint income. Only none of mine and only half of hers is what we were living on. So we basically did something similar to that. We started putting a massive amount of money away and still living pretty frugally. But so the mindset was, number one, we had been forced to realize that we could live on a whole lot more. But that's not the important part of the mindset. I guess I got off track a little. The real part of the mindset is how you think about money. And we all have limiting beliefs, not just about money, but about many things in our lives. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'm not old. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm not handsome. Whatever it is. We have limiting beliefs about a lot of things in our life. And we also all have kind of an internal thermostat about money. If you feel you are a $70,000 a year person in your mind, and that means you can buy a new car every 3 or 4 years, and you can live in a nice home. That's how you view yourself. And if circumstances get really hard, you're going to somehow go to work and figure out how. In other words, if you can't afford dinner next Saturday, you're going to somehow figure out how to get yourself back to that $70,000 a year place to where your thermostat is set. But the reverse is also true. If you envision yourself as a $70,000 a year person and suddenly you can afford your Lamborghini, you might sabotage yourself because that's not the vision of yourself that you have. So just like I talked about when we were in the hospital and we had that compelling vision in our mind of going sailing, if being wealthy or financially free is part of what you want, you need to create that vision of yourself there. So you need to change your thermostat to set your thermostat at that level, then build a compelling future so you know why you're saving and doing what you're doing. So those are critical elements of the mindset.
Was your why then the actual sailing? That your compelling why was the drive to go sailing then?
Absolutely. Our compelling why was that we wanted to get my wife healed out of the hospital and go sailing. And the doctors had wanted to amputate her feet,
Oof.
and we refused. Her feet had been frozen; they were coal black and hard as a rock, and her fingers as well. And the doctors told us they were going to amputate both of her feet, and then they would wait a few days to see if they'd amputate her fingers.
Yeah.
And we simply decided that wasn't going to happen, and we refused to sign the papers authorizing the surgery.
Yeah.
And then we worked on having this compelling future. So then from then on, we had this image of what we were saving for, why we were doing what we were doing, all those things. And then the next part of it is rewiring your brain. So I rewired my brain to going out and buying a new Porsche would have been painful as hell to me. And seeing the number in my stock portfolio grow was total pleasure. So, if you're, I know it's more women than men, but retail therapy, if you have to go buy a new purse to make yourself feel good, flip that upside down on its head and make yourself feel good when you see the number in your investment account grow.
Yeah.
And that's really a critical mindset. And so that's kind of the essence of the mindset part of it.
Yeah, and that's the basis, isn't it? The basis of developing the ability of financial independence is creating the right mindset to begin with.
Absolutely. That's the first step. And if you meet wealthy people, they have that mindset. Those things are part of their mindset.
Yeah.
And everybody has different strategies. And, everybody thinks that no matter what you want to accomplish in your life, we tend to focus on the how, the strategy of it. So if listeners say, oh, there's a guy doing a podcast on retirement, they expect to tune in and, hear somebody say, buy here, sell that, whatever, and the strategy. And that's not where you should start to solve any problem in your life. You should start with the mindset around it, and then putting yourself in a powerful, creative state. And when you do that compelling future, you turn on parts of your brain that then help you access more creativity, more resiliency, more flexibility. So literally by thinking about what kind of sailboat we were going to buy, we made ourselves better filmmakers so we could make more money.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that.
And that's a kind of a confusing concept, but when you have a compelling future, your whole body reacts differently. Your shoulders are back, you stand tall, you breathe deeply, you have this big dream in your mind, and that allows you to be more effective at whatever you're doing. Like I say, creativity, resiliency. You'll be a better salesperson if you're in sales, if you have that mindset. And a salesman knows that. They pump themselves up before they, make the knock on the door.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're putting that compelling future into your body so you access more of your abilities, so then you're more effective at whatever it is you do to earn a living.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. It makes perfect sense. And so principle 1, developing the right mindset. Principle number 2, spend less and save more. You've mentioned that you lived on your wife's salary, and pretty much for 2 years, you almost give up your whole salary. So I guess that kind of inadvertently helped you develop that
absolutely.
That habit.
When you have to do without it, you realize
you don't need it.
That latte isn't really an essential part of life. So just look around your life. It's easy to do. You can probably within minutes. First of all, you have to know what you're spending. So make yourself a budget.
Yeah.
Write down, here's where every penny goes in my month. And certainly, start with all your big items, your mortgage or your rent and your food budget and your car payment and insurance, and get all those things on a piece of paper or on a spreadsheet and know what you're spending. And then how much you have left, that's the mandatory stuff you got to get covered. And then you start to figure out what, okay, well, we can go out less one night a week or one night a month less for dinner, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we were forced into that, as you said, because of our situation. But, do it. So we had a hammer pounding on us to figure out every penny. But regardless, people can do that and just figure out what less you can spend. And then you know what you can invest. So that's principle number 2. It's fairly straightforward. Everybody can figure out something they can save. And the other thing is, if you look online at a compound interest table. The concept of compound interest is also a very compelling reason about saving and earning. And I don't have any numbers off the top of my head, but if you take $10 a month when you're 30 years old, the number that it accrues to is huge. It's much, much bigger than if I start when I'm 45 and I put away $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so go online, look for a compound interest table, and just play with some of your numbers. Like, okay, I think I could save $25 a month here, 50 there. I think I can put $75 a month in, and I start when I'm in college. Holy cow, you can retire really young. And then number 3 is increase your earnings. And that's where most people think they need to start. I just need to make more money. And in fact, we've got steps 1 and 2. And step 2 is more important than step 3 because it's easier to save a dollar that you already have in your hand than to go out and find a job to earn you another dollar. So work on them in this order. First, work on your mindset, then work on your savings. Then you can start figuring out step 3, how to earn money. This is so much easier to do today with the internet. There's, so many people have some kind of side hustle, some gig job or whatever. And I don't know about all of those. I mean, there's so much going on. I'm older. I don't watch every new trend on the internet, but figure out something hopefully that maybe doesn't require inventory, doesn't require a cash outlay to get started. And that's one of the things that the internet has really made possible. I guess when I can't think of very many businesses when I was doing what I did that you could start with very little money. You had to have a product to sell. You couldn't just market it without money. There was no internet where you can market it for virtually free or anything like that. So that's opened up a whole world. It's also the kind of thing you can do your regular job 9 to 5 and you can come home and have a side hustle. And if you just took all the money from your side hustle and put it away, again, look at those compound interest tables and see if I just make $600 a month that I don't have to do anything with but put it in the bank or put it in an investment account, it accrues very, very rapidly. And so really that was a very long-winded answer to get to the question you asked, but literally it was 3 years, I think, from when we started deciding we wanted to retire to when we retired. And we got there much quicker than we thought. We had a 10-year plan and we actually got there in 3 years.
Wow.
And then
you had a 10-year plan and you got there in 3.
Yeah, we got there in 3.
Yeah.
And then the miraculous thing happened. We had enough money to go sailing, we figured, for 3 or 4 years and a little bit of cushion so that we could come back and have enough money to get our feet on the ground and
restart again.
Start earning again.
Yeah.
And then this weird thing happened. We went sailing, and at the end of the first year, because we were investing our money very wisely, we had more money than we had started at the end of the first year.
Wow. Brilliant.
At the end of the second year, we had even more money.
And this is while you're sailing around.
Right. So
Brilliant.
We did our 4 years, and by then our nest egg was much bigger than when we had left. And so then if you think about it from a totally logical standpoint,
let's just carry on.
We had to keep sailing.
Yeah, it was working.
The longer we sailed, the more money we ended up with in our bank account because we were living on less than what our nest egg was earning.
Yeah.
The sailing lifestyle was very inexpensive, and it still is quite inexpensive. You just don't have all the stuff that we have ashore, and there's not a lot of things to spend money on, and you can't buy stuff because you don't have room to put it on your sailboat. It's very small.
Yeah.
And so we had anticipated sailing for 4 years, and we just kept on going and ended up being 17 years. And we thought we were going to do those 4 years down in the Caribbean, and we ended up sailing all around the world over 17 years.
Absolutely brilliant. So you literally set off with enough to go for 4 years. And then after year 1, you had more money. After year 2, more money again. So 17 years later, you just carried. Absolutely love it. Brilliant. What boat did you go on then? What was the actual...
It's a boat called an Island Packet 40. It's kind of was the, I would say, the premier long distance cruising boat. People bought them for that reason of going offshore, sailing across big oceans.
Yeah.
It was 40 feet, which is a perfect size for two people. And so we bought kind of the boat of our dreams, and
Was that the
worked for
boat?
us.
Was that the boat that you envisioned all those years earlier then? You and your wife, when you were creating this compelling why? Was it an Island Packet 40?
Absolutely, absolutely. We were in the sailing. We made sailing movies. We were filmmakers, but the last part of our career, we just made movies about sailing. But we lived in Colorado, and I would go to the boat shows multiple times a year because we were there to work in them. But I would always go hang out on the Island Packet boat, and the salesman, as soon as you step aboard, they'd always ask you, what kind of boat do you have now? They're trying to qualify you and see if you're a real buyer or if you're a tire kicker. And I'd say, well, I had a laser, which is like an 8-foot little boat that you use on a lake that little kids learn on. And so I'd walk on the boat and say, well, I have a laser and we live in Colorado. And the guy's like, next, let me talk to a real customer.
Please. Yeah.
And we did that for years and years, actually. But we got to know the owners of the company, that they were based out of Florida, and then they knew who we were after a while because of the sailing movies. They knew about us very much, and they had actually contacted us about making a film for their company,
right?
Just a promotional film.
Yeah.
And I gave them a quote, and it was way more than they wanted to spend. And they went to some low budget film guy, and they made a film, and it was terrible, and I told them I said, if you do that, you're actually wasting money. It won't help your sales a bit. You won't use it. And then they called me about 6-8 months later and said, well, you were right. Can you use that guy's footage and then and incorporate it into the film you quoted us? And I said, yeah, it'll save you like $100 out of, the cost of a $20,000. So they didn't do anything. It was just, they'd already spent their money.
That was it. They spent the
budget.
But
we maintained good relationships. And then when we were ready to go sailing, we could afford their 38-foot boat on the used market. That was kind of and that's the boat we had in mind pretty much. We wanted the 40, but we knew the 38 used was where our price range was. But I just took a flyer. Something else I learned from my mentor, Tony Robbins, is take massive action. And so I suggested to them that we would do a film where we personally endorsed their product. So it wasn't just the kind of film that they had thought about earlier about whatever they wanted to say about their corporation. This was now my wife and I, who had all this sailing expertise. We'd sailed and filmed all over the world, saying this is the boat we've selected for ourselves to go around the world.
Yeah.
And they offered me a gigantic deal on the sailboat. I couldn't sign the contract and get it back to them fast enough before they changed their mind. And so we made a film about their boat. And then when you buy a sailboat, it's kind of naked. There's a lot of stuff you have to put on it, to instruments and water makers and radios and all this. And so I contacted all the other manufacturers of all this outboard stuff and said, we're doing this film. We want to use your product. I said, we're going to buy your radio, or we're going to have your radio on our boat, whether you participate or not. But if you participate, you'll be in the film. We'll talk about your radio. And I think I approached 42 companies of different products that we were going to add to the boat. And all 41 of them said, we want to be part of the film. So they gave us either a huge discount or completely donated the product. And so we ended up saving, I don't know, $70,000, $80,000 on our boat, which enabled us to have the Island Packet 40 we wanted, outfitted exactly the way we wanted.
Everything that you wanted, So you were the front runner for all these modern day YouTube channels that now do exactly what you just described right there. But you did it in the 90s. You were doing it in the 90s. Yeah,
and the product, this video magazine we had was completely the front runner for YouTube channels and all that. It was just, we charged people $100 a year, and this was VHS video cassettes. They got 4 of them one every quarter, every 3 months they got another one. And we had 10,000 subscribers, each paying us $100 a year. So it was $1 million a year business. It wasn't extremely profitable because early on we had spent so much money growing to that size. That's the difficulties we were in. But the other point I want to make is that my belief about business, however you earn your money, it's about adding value. Whether you're in business, doing business with somebody else, or whether you're just working for a company, it's about adding value to your company. And so when we put this deal together, it was about adding value to all these different companies. And so we made this film, and Island Packet had given us a big discount on the boat. Then we saved another $70,000 by all the other products. And a few years, I don't remember how big the discount Island Packet gave us was, but maybe 40 or 50 grand, somewhere in there. I can't really remember. But a few years later, they told us that that film had generated $4.2 million in boat sales for them that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And they had people come into them with the video cassette in their hand and say, I'm going to go sail around the world. I want this boat outfitted just this way with all these radios and water. Exactly what the Dubins did is what I want.
Yeah.
And here's my check. And so, so that's when you talk about earning more money. If you make it a win-win for everybody, if you add value to people, you will not have a problem earning money.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, we'll get to the next step 4 in a minute here, but I guess this is the end of step 3, is how to earn more. Figure out what problem you can solve for somebody doing what you love. That's where I always came from. I told you I never had a job. I mean, the only job I ever had in my life was a paper route. Every other thing I did after that, I was getting paid to do something I wanted to do anyway. And if you do that, it's not work. And so it makes everything just so much easier. So if you want to, this is sort of a little bit of a digression, it's career advice, but if you think about what you're good at, what you love to do, and then you think about a problem you can solve for somebody by doing that and that they will pay you for, that's a career that you will enjoy. And then working, earning your freedom chips for your financial independence takes on a whole new meaning right there. And when you are in that mindset, it makes you more successful, so you earn it faster and you're better at what you do. If you're doing what you love, you're going to be better at it. Therefore, you're going to earn more money at it. Therefore, you're going to be able to have financial independence at a younger age.
Yeah. Each one compounds on the next, doesn't it? And something you said was really great there, that, principle number 3 is increase your earnings. But by offering your services to another company, you indirectly increased your own wealth, because you got a £40,000 or $40,000 discount off Island Packet, and then all the rest of the discounts off the rest of the products that you then used on your boat. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'll increase my earnings by earning X number every month. By offering something that you've got to add value to them, you can increase your value that way, your wealth that way, can't you? Great insight.
Absolutely. And if you look at the people that are the wealthiest in the world, they created value for other people. The way they did it is they created value for other people.
Yeah. So
anyway, that brings us to the last
principle number 4. Why is investing?
Principle number 4, which is what most people want to talk about, is the strategy.
Yeah.
And it's important to have the strategy, but you got to have the foundation first. You've heard me mention Tony Robbins several times. He's been a huge mentor to me, so I can't help but mention him. He has 2 really good books on financial stuff. One of them is a very simple book. It's called Unshakable. It's just the basics of finances and earning money. And that was the thing that I guess that was probably part of the mindset that changed for me. I took a course with Tony, and he said, look, unless you focus on money, you won't have it. And that was the change for me, because I had always said, as long as I made creative films, I don't care, but when I did want to care, you got to learn about it. It is not too complicated. People think, it's so complicated, I don't know about it. And I have, since I retired and people saw what I created for myself and that I retired young, people asked me for advice. And I have counseled people that are really brilliant, that are tremendous in their careers, making a ton of money, and they'd never had the first idea about investing. And my father was that way. He was a doctor. He made a good living. He understood not one thing about investing or making more money with what he had. And so It's just like any, it is not complicated. It's not algebra or geometry or trigonometry. It's pretty simple, but you just got to spend a little bit of time learning about it and focusing on it.
Agreed. Yeah.
So Tony has two good books. One is called Unshakable. It's a very slim, thin volume that'll give you the basics. And then he has one that's the opposite end of the spectrum, very detailed and complex, where he interviews all the best investors in the world, the most successful people, and they give very conflicting advice. So it's hard to read that one and then know what to do. You got 27 different strategies. But my strategy is really simple. I decided I never play the stock market. I have made a lot of money by investing. I've never played the stock market. And to me, the people that talk about, having the big secret information or this next stock is going to be the next Apple and all that, they're wrong 70% of the time. If you take all the guys that are on TV that are going to tell you buy Microsoft this week or whatever, you go back and look at their track record year after, go back and review their shows. Most of them don't do well in the long term. And we all know, you guys are in the UK, but in America, everybody goes to Las Vegas, and everybody has a friend who tells them they just went to Vegas and they made $5,000. Nobody has a friend who just says, I just came back from Vegas and I lost $5,000.
Yeah, that's right.
But Vegas makes a lot of money for the owners of the casino, so you do the math.
Yeah.
More people lose than win.
Yeah, somebody's losing.
But nobody
all that
brags
money.
about their losses. And it's the same in the stock market. Oh, I just found out about this stock and I bought low and sold high and I made a killing. Well, next week the guy lost twice as much. So my attitude is slow, steady, long-term growth in investments that have an underlying value. If I buy XYZ manufacturing, the market may go up and down, but if XYZ is run by a competent CEO, they make a good widget that people buy, they're still going to have some underlying value. So that's what I look for.
Yeah.
So the only thing you don't want to have happen is the market takes a big tank and you need that money to live on this year, so you have to sell it when it's down.
Yeah.
So if you invest for long-term growth, the other thing I decided early on is I invest almost exclusively in mutual funds. And not because they're the best, but it's a simple strategy. And if you have a small amount of money, by buying a mutual fund, you immediately get diversification. So if you buy XYZ widget company and suddenly, they have a fire in the factory and they go out of business, you're done.
Yeah.
If you buy a mutual fund, in a sense, you've bought 20 or 30 companies, and if one of them has a problem, you still have the other 19. So if you don't have a lot of money to invest, you have immediate diversity by buying a mutual fund.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Is that what you did as well when you were actually selling around the world? That's what the strategy you used when you were, after year one, you had more money than you started as well?
Yes, I did buy individual stocks also, but then it gets more complicated.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you a simple, but I still have probably today I have 80% or 50% of my money in mutual funds probably.
Yeah.
And I have when we started across the Pacific, so we've been out sailing 7 or 8 years in the Caribbean. And when we were in the Caribbean, we had pretty good internet and access to the world. And so I kept managing my own money. When we headed across the Pacific and we were sometimes out of touch for months at a time, I hired a fiduciary money manager. And there's two kinds of money managers. You can go to, Edward Jones or something and get a stockbroker. And if that stockbroker knew much about making money, he would be working for one of the hedge funds or one of the mutual fund companies making, $1 million a year. So when people say to me, and I don't mean to slam stockbrokers, but when people say to me, my broker recommended, I laugh, because your broker does not know anything more than your plumber does. I mean, now, if you go to a financial advisor, he can advise you about things like put X amount away for this, do this for your kids' college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can give you the advice on your entire financial picture. But when it comes to specifically investing, if your broker works for Charles Schwab, somebody in the head office of Schwab says, we think this is going to happen. This is what we want to push this, or whatever. So it's not like some kind of advice that you can really take to the bank, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there are two different kinds of financial advisors. Some of them you pay a fee to and they do your stuff, or they like a broker at Edward Jones or something, they make money every time you buy and every time you sell. The other kind is a fiduciary, and they are obligated. I'm speaking about U.S. law. I have no idea what it is in the U.K., so
it's all right.
That.
Yeah.
But a fiduciary is obligated to do what's in your best interests. And the way you pay fiduciaries is you pay them a percent of your portfolio. So if they make you money, your portfolio gets bigger and they make more money. So they have your best interest totally at heart. There's no benefit to them to churn, buy and sell rapidly, so to run up their commissions. There's no point for them to sell you XYZ stock to get a commission. So they really only have your best interest at heart. So my advice is, if you want a financial advisor, make sure they're a fiduciary and look at their track record for a bunch of years and select them that way. And that's what we did when we headed across the Pacific. And I still have about maybe 60% of my money with them. I still manage about 40% of it. And the 40% that I manage, I do the simplest thing in the world. It takes me about 5 minutes a month, maybe. There's a lot of financial newsletters out there, and they're like the guys that are on TV just telling you what stock to buy and sell. But there was one newsletter that rated all the other newsletters.
Right.
So I don't even know if it's still in existence. I think it is. It was called Holbert Financial Digest, and they rate all the newsletters, and they say, we've looked back through their what they recommended 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Here's how you would do if you followed their advice all these years.
Right.
And one of the very top ones was a newsletter called Fidelity, Monitor, and Insight. And so I said, well, gee, this is one of the top ones. It's been the top one for 30 years, for the last 5 years, the last 20 years, the last 30 years. And they only advise on Fidelity mutual funds. So it was exactly what I wanted. It was just one fund family, which makes it really easy.
Yeah.
So Fidelity is a family of funds, and they're very large, and they have all kinds of funds. They have some that are just in the banking sector, some that are just in the tech sector, some that are in the healthcare sector. But their healthcare sector fund, it owns 30 different healthcare companies. So if you buy one share of their healthcare fund, you own a little bit in 30 different companies. So you've got the diversification. And because it's a big fund family, if next month they think healthcare is going to go down and tech is going to go up, you can very easily just get online, and in minutes you can transfer your money from the healthcare to the tech sector.
Yeah.
So they're two different entities. There's Fidelity Funds that does the investing, and there's this newsletter that has no relation to Fidelity other than that they only focus on Fidelity funds. So they just advise on which of Fidelity's funds to buy and sell. They're two completely different companies. And so the Fidelity Modern Newsletter has maybe 5 or 6 or 7 what they call model portfolios. And this is back to the question you asked about dividends. So they have some that focus heavily on dividends for people that are old that want to just live on their dividends, want a very secure investment. They have ones that are more growth oriented, which is what I'm still in. Even though I'm in my 60s, I still am looking for long-term growth. So they have funds that are growth oriented funds. They have some that are unique opportunities, which are each one is from the minimum risk to the maximum risk. The more you risk, the more you gain, but you have to have a longer term horizon.
Yeah.
So you read about their different portfolios and you say, this fits I still want to sleep at night, and it depends on what your comfort level is and how long your horizon is for investing. But you pick one of their portfolios, and then it just says, put X amount, 10% into this fund, 5% in this one, 20% in this one. So you'll own 5 or 6 funds, and every Friday they send out an email, and every month they do a recap, and they say, everything's going good, don't do anything. And the next Friday they send you another one that says, everything is good, don't do anything. And about half a dozen times a year they'll say, go online and transfer, we're going to sell our tech sector funds and we're going to buy the medical funds. And you go online and you spend 10 minutes and you transfer the money and you're done. And I think the money that I have in that portfolio, I think did 24% or 27% this year, or in 2021.
Yeah.
And
Really
they're up, I think the average for the last 3 years on that portfolio is 30.1%.
Yeah.
Now that's a gigantic return.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And it is this literally takes me 5 minutes a month. So that's what I do.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, so much great information in there as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure the audience will pick up on the insights there that you've shared with them. Absolutely fantastic. Where can the audience follow you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they? I know that you've got a PDF that you like to share, and it's completely free. So where can they get that from?
Yeah, mostly actually, I'm not in the retirement or the financial investment field at all.
No, you're
I'm
just trying to help. You're just trying to help people, aren't you? You're just trying to share
because
a good
we
message.
did what we did. I get asked the question, and I do try and help people. I'm a motivational speaker. I speak to corporations on employee happiness and fulfillment, and especially now in light of the Great Resignation with so many people leaving their jobs, I go in and I talk about how to live a happy, fulfilling life. So that's really what I do. But I get asked the question so often that I did put together this little 4-page PDF that people can download. It's on my website, which is just my name, Rob Dubin, ROBDUBIN.com. And if they go to the frequently asked questions page, there's a little form they can put their name in, and I will send them a page that lists all the PDFs they can download. There's some other stuff there about happiness and fulfillment and relationship strategies and things like that.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll make sure those links are directly in the show notes. So for anyone that wants to access them, please, I encourage you to go ahead. So thank you very much, Rob, for your time. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks for having me. I wish happy investing to all your listeners.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you don't have to stop there either. We have more videos on the screen for you and lots more insightful content on our channel and our website, fundyourretirement.com. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.